Hey guys, hello and welcome to this next video in chess improvement step by step. Puzzles. So now we're looking at chess puzzles, but we're also looking at a specific type of puzzle that I want you to look for. Don't just look for the simple check, 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 checkmate puzzle, but rather look for puzzles like this where the mate begins not with the check move, but with something else. This adds some additional challenges to you as you look for that mate. It's white to move, mate in 2. So white to move, mate in 2. And this is a rather challenging one. What I'd like you to do is to pause this video and look for the solution on your own. Just take time, look for that solution, and only when you've either found the solution or spent, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes without finding the solution, then go ahead and unpause the video and see if you can find the way that white checkmates black here in 2 moves. Some of these are pretty tricky. So I'll understand if you only find maybe the first 2 or 3 ways that you get the checkmate and you don't consider all the moves for black. But when I go back over this with you, we'll consider all of black's moves, or several of them I should say. There's a couple that we can ignore because they begin to repeat other positions we've seen. But in general, we'll look at a lot of the moves for black. So please pause the video, look for mate in 2 for white, try to consider several variations for black, not just the one move and you have the mate, let's say, but multiple ways it could go down. And try to really understand this position. This thought process is what's going to help you in your own games to solve the problems that you face in a game. Maybe it's winning a pawn. Maybe it's putting a mating net on the king. Maybe it's getting some kind of endgame advantage. And you take the time and you see it and you execute. And this is such a big part of chess. The tactic isn't even always about the tactic itself. It's about understanding chess. It's about understanding where pieces belong, where how to take away squares from the king, let's say in this case, right? And the better you are at this, the more likely you are to win your games. And if you can do it as exact as possible, really quickly, not missing the mate, when you get into huge time trouble, you're not having to walk every pawn up the board to queen and get two queens or ridiculous advantages where sometimes you get stalemates, right? And this is also a ridiculous advantage. White has a lot of material here, but it's a little more challenging mate to find. So pause the video and then we'll go ahead and go over these variations with you. Good luck. I've given you some time to stop and think about this puzzle. Now let's go ahead and see if we can find the right moves for white here. It begins with 1, rook to e2. It looks like a crazy move. Like how can you play this? What about bishop takes queen? Well, if bishop takes queen, rook to e6 is checkmate. The rook attacks the king. The pawn guards this square. The bishop has both of these squares. The rook is somehow guarding this pawn, so that pawn's still around. The knight is guarding the rook, and the rook also controls these 2 squares. A very beautiful checkmate with the pieces very well coordinated. All the pieces working together except for these 2, the king and the pawn, right? But the rest of the pieces are all active in this mate. But what about a different move? Maybe black fights for a square and captures the bishop, hoping that this square is going to provide a defensive resource for the king, a square to run away to. But now the knight comes in, and the knight with check also takes away that square. And again, we see this wonderful piece coordination where the queen is guarding the pawn, the rook is controlling these squares, and the king is attacked by the knight, and that is checkmate. Right? Right there. Beautiful. Okay, so we've moved the bishop a few times. We've seen that there's some mating ideas, right? It seems like every time we move the bishop, it almost becomes too simple. We can start seeing things like maybe queen to g5. It's like it's rook to e6. If g5 isn't available, the bishop moves this way. Then we could play rook to e6 checkmate, right? But what about the king moves? What about those moves? What about king to e5? King to e5, what are you thinking about? Well, maybe the first thought you have is this bishop check. But unfortunately, the bishop check drops a crucial square, f4. And if we're not controlling f4, the king can just walk to that square. So that can't be correct. So instead, although you want the dark square control, you want to move the queen over to a1. And look at that. Right through the king's squares, checkmating the king. The knight controlling these 2 squares. The king controlling this square and this one that the knight controls. And our bishop has the backside covered with f4. Additionally, our pawn is covering the final square, e4. And again, it's checkmate. Just a beautiful mate. And now the last one, which I consider to be one of the hardest. What if the king was to go to e7? King goes to e7, and this one of the ones that I found for this, the checkmates, this was one of the hardest ones for me to see. And why is that? Well, part of it is I'm looking at my opponent's pieces. I'm looking at the pawn and the bishop, and I'm considering the squares that they control, right? And because I consider them controlling these squares, all of these squares, just trying to highlight them here, it has me thinking that the checkmate move isn't possible. But then it occurs to me that this rook is actually pinning the bishop to the king. And that pin changes everything. And this is an important thing about pinning pieces. A pinned piece is no longer active, no longer controlling squares, especially if it's pinned to the king, right? If it's pinned to the queen, just like we saw at the beginning of this combination, we can move out of that pin. But a king pin is an absolute pin where you cannot move away. It violates the rules of the game. You cannot put yourself in check. And because you cannot put yourself in check, when the queen comes up to g5, attacking the king, gaining control of these last couple squares, because remember, the pawn's already there. We've seen a lot of these pieces already active here. The knight's already here. The queen's got this square back here. The king's got this one. The king's got that one. And what about this square? Oh, there's the knight again. Knight's helping out. And again, a beautiful checkmate. So what do I like about this puzzle? The first thing I like about this puzzle is, again, it didn't start with check. The other thing I like about this puzzle is we moved into a discovered attack. We moved our rook out of the way, allowing the bishop to take our queen. Beautiful, beautiful way to start this. Additionally, there were what, at least 4 different variations. There's actually more. You can move the bishop to more squares and look for those yourself, but I think I've shown you the main ones, and a lot of the other ones are gonna pattern similarly, so we're not gonna go over those. But I just wanted you to be able to see the type of thing you should be looking for in puzzles. So if you find a book, maybe you find like a chess problem book. I've got this award-winning chess problems by Bert Hodgeberg, and then that's the book that I actually got this puzzle from. I've additionally got 303 Crushing Chess Tactics, but it doesn't matter what the book is or the website. The goal is to look for puzzles that are like this. It should have a similar feel. You should find yourself struggling a bit to find all of the variations. It shouldn't be obvious. If it's just 3 moves and it's like little boxes, like only move, check, 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 and then mate or whatever it is, mate in 4 or mate in 3, whatever. Sure, it helps. It's still pattern recognition, but it's not the same level as what I want you to look for your chess improvement. This is the type of thing I want you to look for. And obviously they're not all going to be like this, but several of them in these books will be like this, and they're good, and they're challenging, and they're going to help me grow, and they'll help you grow as well. So don't neglect puzzles. Take the time to do them, whether it's chess.com, Lee Chess, and again, some of those may not be quite to the level of this puzzle, at least not at the lower rating levels, right? But as you advance, maybe that you get into some more challenging stuff. But I really want to see you guys focusing on puzzles. If you care about your chess improvement, take the time to do puzzles. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to giving more content to you soon in this chess improvement step-by-step series. And I feel like the purpose of this series isn't necessarily to show you everything, it's to help you help yourself. You know, we give you some puzzles, we give you some mental images of how to go forward in chess, and then from that, you're able to have the success that you've been wanting. So hope you have a great day, and I hope you've enjoyed this puzzle, and good luck in your own chess games.